Hello, everyone. I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by commentary legend Clive Tyldesley. It's not every day we have such a storied and well-known face on the podcast, so it's fantastic to have you here, Clive.
Thank you very much indeed. I can't pretend that I'm not a little disappointed that this season it's my turn to do the Champions League final rather than the Europa League final. For CBS, I do European football for the US network, and Peter Drury and I alternate. I've got a fabulous trip to Paris coming up, and my son's a big Liverpool fan, so that'll be very, very special. But Seville's going to be special too.
Yeah, we're going to get onto that. I want to kind of take you through a brief journey of your time with Rangers over the last couple of seasons. I know the fans have absolutely loved your commentary, Clive. I had a wee cycle through Twitter, put in your name with Rangers. There isn't a negative comment out there. You've been sort of very, very...
Try Celtic. You might get a few.
Oh, I didn't do that. I just wanted to ask you a little bit about, how it came about, because I know you've never really done club TV before, and there might have been a few reservations about whether or not you wanted to do that, given a long career and obviously broadcasting, where you were very much someone who would always be completely impartial. But you did actually kind of maintain that impartiality while you were doing Rangers TV and still managed to hit all the right notes, I think, as well.
Well, it's nice if you think so, and maybe one or two others besides. And it is it's a difficult ball to juggle. It came about because of COVID, essentially. And I think that Rangers wanted to try to provide a service for the fans who couldn't come to Ibrox that they would recognise as being Rangers quality. And that may sound a little bit big-headed, but Ali was lined up for a little while to come as a co-commentator until he signed up with Sky. Kevin was absolutely outstanding as a co-commentator. I remember Walter coming on, as part of the studio lineup for a couple of games. Graham Souness came up from down south. I think Neil McCann's an outstanding analyst. Emma's just, again, top class sort of network standard broadcaster. So the lineup appealed to me. I do have a bit of history with Rangers. I go a long way back with Graham Souness, and I did come up to quite a few games during his time in charge. Obviously, I've been up to for Champions League games as I have across on the east side too. My wife is from Edinburgh. Her mum lives in Edinburgh, so it kind of made logistical sense for us to come up. And when I asked the question about how they wanted me to broadcast, the answer was clear. Be as editorially strong, if you like, as you would be if you were commentating for Sky or ITV or whoever. And a bad Rangers pass is a bad Rangers pass. And, I kind of said that right from the outset. I think I said something in the opening game about, which was the more important number, 10 or 55, which was picked up by the record, and goodness knows who too. The point I was making is I probably didn't fully understand the importance of ending 9 in a row. I always feel that motivation should be a positive rather than a negative thing, that you should look for something that you can achieve rather than stopping somebody else from achieving something. And I got lucky. Steven Gerrard, I've had a long association with him and with Gary Mack. Andy Scolding I knew from England Times. So I had friends there, and they started winning football matches, and I never stopped. And, I think if there is any affection attached to my voice and last season, it's more to do with the number of W's than any consonants or vowels that I came out with.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, it was an incredible season, obviously, and there wasn't too many of those aforementioned stray passes, was there? Which is, I suppose, part of the joy of it.
They didn't win every game wonderfully well, and I think it was interesting coming in at the start of this season because there was an automatic association with the return of the fans being a plus, and of course it's a plus. Of course it's a plus. It's a more than a plus. It's a must. It's a must for football, let alone for Rangers Football Club. But it came with it was a little dual-edged in so much that I think everybody came back full of expectation that they were going to be treated to exactly what we'd witnessed behind closed doors the season before. And I hate the word pressure because it's kind of nobody ever defines what pressure is. Pressure is expectation, really. Expectation of yourself and expectation of others. And the expectations of Rangers were sky high at the start of this season, not just to win games, but win them magnificently well. They didn't win every game magnificently well last season.
Yeah.
And when it was 0-0 after an hour against St Mirren or whatever, there was no tension in the stadium, really, other than what the players' own pride was creating. And because Rangers are generally better than the team that they're lining up against, they can take their time to win games. And there was always a feeling, I think, Steven, Michael Beale and Gary Mack always had a feeling that, you know, if they stuck to their principles and the way they wanted to play, they were going to win 9 games out of 10 against Scottish Premiership opposition anyway. And that little bit of anxiety, that little bit of frustration, which is part of supporting your football team. You know, I hate it when I hear a manager say a plead for patience from the fans. No, that's not what you paid your money for, to be patient. You paid your money to be entertained and to have the exhilaration, the thrill, the uplifting feeling of seeing your team win games. And, you know, Rangers fans have been without that for a year, but they did bring some of their tensions. You brought some of your tensions back into the stadium, and that's great. That's fine. That's how football should be. But it was a slightly different experience, and I think one or two of the players found it so, and I found it a little bit difficult. I'm not saying that's the reason the title has eluded them this time. I mean, it's eluded them by really fine margins. I mean, you know, over the course of a season, it's 4 points in the end, was it?
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to explain those away almost in the first half hour at Celtic Park. I mean, whatever that was about earlier in the year. There wasn't much between the two teams. I think we saw that in the last 3 derbies, really, even the semi-final. Rangers, you know, if you added up the minutes played in those last 3 derbies, Rangers were probably the better team for longer than Celtic were. So, yeah, I mean, there are a million reasons why this season hasn't been quite last season. But even though I was privileged to be inside Ibrox when you guys couldn't be, this season, this sounds a crazy thing to say. This season's better. It's better when there are people there. And, you know, we've seen that in these wonderful, I mean, the memories of, particularly the 2 late winners, you know, Johnny Lundstrom's winner and Kamar Roof's winner against Braga. You can't take those even Phil Hollander's winner against Celtic earlier in the season. You cannot take those moments away. You can't get that watching Rangers television.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Clive, I want to take you down a wee route because you mentioned something I thought was quite interesting, you know, about you coming up to Scotland, you being a well-kent face, as we say in Scotland. You'll have heard that from your wife before, I'm sure, that old Scottish phrase. But people talk about, for players arriving in Glasgow, it being like a goldfish bowl, it being a very intense environment. And you got a sense of that, I'm sure, because what you mentioned, you know, whatever you see on Rangers TV, it's suddenly reported as news. I remember there was an article, you know, Clive Tyldesley's 5 best singers on his Rangers debut. They're actually were picking out elements of what you had to say, recording the whole thing. And that sort of level of glare must have been quite sort of taken aback a little bit for you, or wasn't it?
No, I mean, there is a different jeopardy to 21st century broadcasting, full stop. You know, Twitter has changed everything in the last decade. And you know, if I had a mind to, I could end my career right now by saying something. You know, that's where we are.
Yeah.
It's because with the greatest respect to the rest of the Premiership and, you know, the rest of Scottish football, because there are only really two stories in town, and because those stories can never be the same story, they can only ever be sort of juxtapositioned against each other. That is the nature of the rivalry there. And you know, I probably learned to tiptoe around. I got a couple. I made the mistake of referring to Celtic as the Hoops in either my first or my second commentary, not for any reason than it stops you keep saying the same thing all the time. You kind of 3 or 4 different ways of saying the same thing. And I got some lovely messages from people, very, very well-meaning, very understanding, very patient, but saying, please don't do that. They're either Celtic or they are them. That they are the only two things that you need to call them. And I kind of smiled, and then I thought, yeah, I'm a stranger in town here. I better play by the rules. And I suppose that, yeah. I mean, I've been to Old Firm games as a, you know, Rangers watcher in the past, so I had a feel for what it was about, but I didn't really know until, as you say, that comment about 10 in a row and 55, and which was slightly sort of, as these things are, misreported. What I did actually say in the midst of it all, Rangers weren't even in the league for 4 of those seasons, and that became, you know, so they don't count and all that sort of thing. And I got all the stuff thrown at me that this isn't, you know, Rangers haven't got any titles. They haven't got 54, let alone, you know, that this is a different football. I was, oh, okay, yeah. I am an outsider, and I will mind what I say in future. And I will probably just comment on what I'm being employed to comment on, which is Rangers Football Club rather than the rivalry. But as you come in as, if you come in as, I don't know, who would be a good example, Cedric Itten. Yeah, it's an eye opener. It's you know, this isn't where you were playing before, and it's bound to take some of these guys a year or so just to get used to being under that kind of scrutiny and the jeopardy that goes with that.
Yeah. I mean, Clive, you've been around some of the biggest clubs in the world in your career. I mean, you've commented on, as you're talking about, you're commenting on the Champions League final that's about to come up between 2 of the truly great European clubs in Liverpool and Real Madrid. But you've been Premier League clubs all your career. I mean, how does Rangers stand in terms of its history and, you know, the stadium and the feeling around the club when you walk in? Do you think it's right up there with the biggest clubs in terms of just the stature that you get when you're in Glasgow and you're in that Ibrox confine?
Yeah, I think the connection between the football club and the supporters, and actually, much as anything pretty much you say about Rangers is probably true of them. You know, the connection is very, very special indeed. You don't get, I don't think you probably get many people who sort of say, oh, well, I'm a Manchester United fan, but Rangers is kind of my second team. They're nobody, it's, you either love or hate Rangers or Celtic. You know, that's kind of that attachment to the football club is handed to you. I mean, I know there are some famous examples of guys who grew up on the east side who became Rangers players, etc., etc. But actually, you pretty much when you know, when the midwife hands you to the parents, that you're either blue or green. That's
spot on, I think.
Yeah, that's the way it is, and that's cool. And what I did probably come to understand just this season when I came up to do some work on the big birthday celebrations is that Rangers fans know the story. You know, they know about the boys in the park and how it all came to pass, and you know, they know their names, and it's not mythical. It's a true story. You know, it's borne out within history. It is only 150 years ago, and I think there's a real pride in that. You know, in how it came to pass, and even the association with the armed forces and the support for the veterans, all of these things are not. They're not normal within a football. However great Liverpool, Real Madrid, they don't have that. They don't have quite that same attachment to where it all started. That same almost family attachment. Obviously, part of it is religion, but it's mainly a family attachment. My dad's a Blues, so that it's a light blue. That's what I'm going to be. And they don't therefore have that identity with some of the things that Rangers stand for. And it's interesting. Ali's obviously a huge friend, and Ali is so generous as a Ranger. I mean, really, Ali could be bitter and twisted about Rangers because he was, as a legendary player, he became manager at the worst possible time in the modern history of the football club, and was kind of chewed up by that modern history a little bit and kind of spat out. But there's no bigger fan of Rangers than Ali McCoist. And if there is, that I know really well, it's probably Graham Souness, who isn't a Rangers fan. But that attachment that you get when you come in through those famous doors and walk up through the wooden panels up the stairs and become a part of that football club, I think it stays with you forever. We see, you only got to listen to Chris Sutton. You'd think he was, born and brought up in the east side of Glasgow. He's not. But that's what these football clubs do to you. And that's why it's different.
Yeah, no, I think that's an absolutely great observation. And you saw that, I think, with Ali when he was celebrating the win over Braga at the end, where he just lost the plot and was dancing. It was just such a great moment of television, where Ali McCoist has basically just become a fan, and you really see what it meant to him. And as you say, a decade on from when he took them, I think they were playing Stirling Albion or something like that a decade before. And, there they are, just about to enter a Europa League final. It's actually a remarkable journey, and Ali, I think, is obviously a major part of that journey, regardless of how it went in the end.
When the title trophy was handed out at the end of last season, I actually researched a list of guys who really deserved a mention. The guys who stuck with it immediately after relegation, after whatever you want to call it, and the guys who played a part in bringing the club back to where it needed to be, on and off the field too. There was. I think that obviously the whole structure of Rangers has been tidied up in modern times, the way that the club is run and financed and so on. So I think those names should never be forgotten, because those you lived through them. I didn't, but they were dark days, dark and difficult days. And I would think the first year, a lot of people must wonder whether it would ever be the same again. Well, look now.
Yeah, absolutely. Clive, in terms of the game that's coming up, it's going to be an incredible atmosphere. It's going to be an incredible occasion. Everyone remembers the great moments from these finals. One of the things that always ends up on my timeline is the Zidane finish, which of course you're commentating on. So it just goes to show you how these fractured moments in time get captured for a generation and arguably for eternity. 50 years' time, they'll still probably be showing that Zidane goal with your voice. And for Rangers fans and in Scotland, if Rangers were to win, the goals will become iconic moments forever entrenched in the Scottish society, really, as previous goals and previous finals have been. How do you kind of think that the players will keep a lid, having been around some of these guys, on the emotions and the intensity, because no one really expected them to get to this stage. So the pressure wasn't really on them up until this point, where I think a lot of Rangers fans now kind of see Rangers as favourites against Eintracht Frankfurt.
Yeah, playing a mid-table team. I mean, it's a mid-table team that's put Barcelona out, and West Ham are not bad. But there's a chance. I mean, and they are a team that give you a chance. We know that. We know that they can see goals. They can certainly score goals. It's appetizing. I think you've got to try to remember where you've come from. I commentated on Malmo at home. I commentated on Al-Ashkert at home for RTV when John Lundstrom was in the dressing room before everybody else at half time. Yeah. I mean, you almost couldn't see him coming back from there where he was. It was such a stupid second yellow card, and he knew it the moment he did it, and he trooped off. And you think, I couldn't help when he smacked in the winning goal in the semi-final, where he, and his journey really has been in many ways Rangers' journey over the course of the last, and it has been. It was July, it started. Rangers have played as many games as Liverpool and Chelsea, and the games at the start of the season. I mean, the Champions League exit was a massive disappointment, but it came in the midst of. It came far too early, really, to be prepared to go and play. And Malmo were okay, actually. They didn't really come out the group stage particularly well, but they played well against Rangers, particularly at Ibrox, considering they lost a player. That was the same stage just before half time. They had a player sent off, so that was a massive down, and then it all became a bit of a struggle. The group stage was a struggle. Lyon were just a lot better than Rangers, and you thought, wow, okay, this is not going to be like last year. Going back to Prague with everything attached to that was difficult. And then didn't it start with there was an own goal, wasn't there? Was that in Denmark when they desperately needed a victory? And then, of course, you've got a change of management. I mean, this incredible, iconic figure who's grown up as a man in Glasgow over the course left. He just went. And, I mean, that's another discussion altogether. But, to deal and to digest all of that, the down of the Champions League exit, losing the manager, one or two of the blows along the season. I mean, they've done this really without. I mean, the last few weeks without Alfredo Morelos, with Yanis Hadji is a really, really good player. We haven't seen him all season.
Yeah,
that it has been a. Let's not forget when Rangers kick off. Where they come from in order to get to this European final. Okay, they may be the bookmakers' favourites, whatever. But they weren't the bookmakers' favourites 2-3 months ago. It has been an extraordinary achievement. And how on earth they get their heads around what's coming next weekend, or any of you get. I mean, this is just even by the standards of Rangers Football Club, the history of Rangers Football Club. And every time I turn around and see I still call him Mr. Greg. He's the one person I don't call by his first name. Sitting there, and everything that represents. But 2 cup finals in 4 days at the end of a season. I mean, lap it up, guys. This is whatever happens. Yeah, whatever happens.
It's immortality, isn't it? It's not very often as a player you have that opportunity, because even at a club, say for example, we're talking about Liverpool. You lift a trophy. They win so many trophies and they've won so many European Cups. It's kind of another memory on the list. And of course, people are not going to forget Steven Gerrard's part in I
hope they don't.
in Istanbul. But the point,
I hope they don't forget his part in what's happening now.
Absolutely not. And I actually was going to ask you about that, Clive, because I know you said you've known him since he's a young boy. I can understand when he's breaking through. A real strong personality. Do you think that there's a possibility that in his mind he is looking at this in a sort of slightly bittersweet way? Because this is very much, and people are aware of this now.
He doesn't do regrets.
No.
He's almost two different people. I don't want to. I could be careful because it's not for me to tell tales out of school. So he can speak for himself, and if he hears me speaking for him, I'll know about it. We're pretty close, but he was a different. It was a different relationship, and he was a different man on a match day. When I was doing Rangers TV, it was almost not Jekyll and Hyde, because we still got on, but we had a professional relationship on a match day, and we had a personal relationship the rest of the week. The two mixed in so much that he would trust me maybe with some insight ahead of the game as to who he was going to choose and what he had in mind, and that was absolute gold dust for a commentator to have that information. But I was always nervous when he told me, because I was then being trusted to a point that, I guess very few people were going to be. And all I can tell you about his exit is that a lot of those conversations that we had it was say it was a Saturday 3 o'clock game, either on a Friday night or on a Saturday morning, he would be on the M74.
Yeah.
He was going home whenever he could for a few hours to see his wife and children in Southport. And that was, by the way, no lack of professionalism on his part. I remember when he had I've just had COVID for the first time. I remember when he had COVID and he was a bear with a sore paw. He was awful to talk to, but he was frustrated because he couldn't work. And he was watching tapes of games for the next opponents and stuff, but he couldn't be there, couldn't be hands-on. He is a very, very intense operator when he's being professional. He's great when he's, when he's relaxed. But on a match day, he was giving everything, but he wasn't able to do. He didn't live in Glasgow. He's got young kids. His home was in England, and I know it's difficult to understand that, but the opportunity to go back and work in England was too big to resist. And he's made his name and reputation in the English Premier League. And, to go back there and share a touchline with Klopp and Guardiola, with the greatest will in the world, to have the budget to go and get Coutinho, go and get Luca Dean, you can't get those. Rangers can't get those players. Yeah. And so even though it happened, I can tell you absolutely, he didn't know anything about it 7 days before it happened. It happened quickly. And he had to make a fairly impulsive decision to go. But I think those hours on the motorway, the fact that he is a family man as well as a very professional man, I hope people understand that it was just too good an opportunity to say no to. And it wasn't an opportunity that he could delay to the end of the season. There was a big European game coming up. There was a big Hampden game, wasn't there, against Hibs was the next game. Yeah. He didn't have any control over the timing. It happened when it happened. But he gave everything he had for Rangers Football Club, and Rangers Football Club benefited hugely from having Steven Gerrard as the manager.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've got a piece up on the website today, Clive, looking at the evolution of Rangers over the 4 years since Steven Gerrard took over. And on the night they beat Ufa, which was a Russian team they faced to get into the Europa League group stage. In his first season, he said, "This is the night we've relaunched Rangers." And I think that was absolutely spot on, because what we've seen since then is a steady evolution. And that was all set in motion by Steven Gerrard and what he created. From a European point of view, his record is absolutely unimpeachable. And this is his team. Giovanni Van Bronckhorst has taken it forward tactically in some ways. They're more aggressive. They're slightly less rigid. But this is a team that Steven Gerrard built, and he built it on a shoestring. And that cannot be forgotten. It's actually an incredible job that he did at Rangers. And I think the animosity surrounding the nature of his exit is whatever there was, because I think a lot of people were still understanding. I think that's diminished as people see the fruits of his labours now that Giovanni Van Bronckhorst has been able to take it on.
And the notion that he was going to sign Kent and Kamara and Goldson and the whole team was going to disappear down to the West Midlands, that was never going to happen. So I think probably that there would hopefully be a bit more understanding of the circumstances. But that's the only insight that I can give you, from knowing the man. He said it publicly. He said it to me in an interview that I did for Amazon Prime before a game. It's essentially down to family and the opportunity to go back to the Premier League. Just those two things. And it wasn't something that had been hatching for months and months and months. It really hadn't. It was something he had to make a big call on. It was in an international break, I think, wasn't it? And he had a few days, and that was it. And the fact that Michael and Gary were going to go with him was really important. Hey, you've got Gio. You've got Gio, and you've still got Kent, and you've still got Goldson. Well, you've still got Goldson, and you've still got Kamara, and so on. So it is, as you say, essentially the team that matured under his guidance.
Yeah, Clive, where will you be watching the game? Will you be supporting Rangers? I'm assuming you will be. And what do you reckon the result's going to be? Put you on the spot.
I don't know. I said I always say when they don't pay commentators anymore to get the scoreline right before the game. If we get it wrong at the end of the game, then we lose our jobs. So of course I want them to win. Yeah, I want them. It has been. I don't support a football team. I'm from Manchester. My dad was a big United fan, and he took me to United when I was 5, and I grew up supporting Manchester United. I was home and away. Even in the second division, I was there that season in the 70s. But when I started to work, I started to make friends. Funnily enough, my first great friend, and still a great friend in football, is Martin O'Neill. So there you go. I do both sides. And then you support your pals. And one of the great draws of coming to work in for Rangers Television was my pal was in charge. Gareth Southgate was at our wedding. My pal's in charge of the England team, so I want them to do. Yeah, of course you want them to do well, and of course now the friendships that I've made through visiting Ibrox over the course of the last 2 years. Of course, I want them to win and win again at the weekend. But I think we saw again in the FA Cup final at the weekend down here. It's the margins are crazy. When you get into a game like this, nobody's probably going to win this final 3-0.
Yeah.
It may well go the distance. It may well come down to,
don't see penalties, Clive.
On the spot. Yeah, whatever. It's. But I think probably the only other thing I'd say, and it's not for me to tell Rangers fans how to behave, but there has been a campaign over the last few days, and it's aimed at just a few people. Because most Rangers fans who've had a camera pointed at the same way would say exactly the same thing. Let's go and enjoy this. Let's go and enjoy this and represent this football club that we love. Let's not do anything at all which will soil the reputation of that football club, win, draw, or lose. And it is a recurring message. And there are going to be an awful lot of light blue shirts in Seville that don't have a ticket, and that's just the nature of the beast. There's nothing we can do about that. The Liverpool have got exactly the same issue in Paris, not enough tickets. But if you go and just to be there, just to be a part of the party, enjoy the party. But when the party's over, go back to your beds. And you've got another cup final to come on Saturday, so don't overdo it. Don't overdo it on Wednesday. wherever you're watching, home or away. I'll be here at home watching. I'll be here at home again at the weekend watching. We may well do our commentary charts for the finals, but the Rangers chart that we did last year has been very, very popular. So.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, Clive, because that is something that I see on social media all the time. These charts they're absolutely incredible. I saw you did one for the 92-93 season.
Yeah, well, we've got a few Rangers ones. We've got the Leuven Crowns final too, which obviously I didn't commentate on, but we get requests. And this started really with other clubs. We put out the kind of replica prints of the kind of research notes that I do for a big game. They're not actually the originals, because the originals stretch over probably 5 or 6 pages, and you need to have a big downstairs loo to hang them all up. But I do a replica print in exactly the same style, and I'll create them on request for games that maybe I haven't commentated on. I just research them retrospectively and produce a chart. And obviously, if the results are I would think of the results either way next Saturday, because I think the Hearts fans would probably like one too.
Yeah.
But we've got a Hibs chart, but we haven't got a Hearts chart. So and the Hibs chart's beating Rangers. So there you go. I mean,
we don't talk about that, Clive.
No, I know.
But not that game.
They do. Strangely.
Did that happen? I'm not sure it did. The one thing I think about these charts, Clive, and anyone who's not seen them, go and seek them out. They are meticulously organised, beautifully presented. Clive, do you ever get halfway through one and make a mistake?
Well, we do have stickers. I think they're meticulously done because hopefully it's almost a psychological prop, really. When you look down at them at kickoff, when the red light comes on, when whoever Emma, whoever hands over to you, you think, well, I've done my bit, I've done my prep. Maybe I'm going to screw up today. And maybe I'm going to make an absolute mess of this, but it won't be for the lack of preparation or research, and that's what they are there for. And hopefully, you only ever use about 10% of what you've done. Otherwise, you start to bore people to tears. But they're an interesting memento of a big match because they don't tell you the story of the match. All they are is a screenshot of kickoff, the two lineups and all the background to the game. And then you add your own memory. If you hang it in your office or you're downstairs loo or whatever, and somebody says, hey, you're right. Yeah, well, I was at that game, or I watched it with so-and-so, so fun. And then you can tell your own story as to what happened. The actual outcome of the game isn't included on the chart. It is, as I say, a print of the commentators' research notes ahead of the game. And we've done them. We started getting requests for games that I wasn't at. And so we started to produce them retrospectively. And yeah, I think you can probably expect another Rangers chart by the end of the week.
Let's hope so. And where can where can the viewers find those if they were wanting to?
Commentarycharts.com. Yeah. Commentarycharts.com. The Rangers charts we've got at the moment are the Love and Crowns final. And then what I call a season grid, which is all the results, appearances and scorers from 92-93 and obviously from number 55.
Okay, guys. Well, have a look on there. They're absolutely fantastic. I genuinely love these things, so check them out. Clive didn't even know I was going to bring this up, but there you go. I do actually love this product, so give it a look. Clive, thank you very much for coming on. It's been fantastic to have you. I think everyone who's been listening to you on Rangers TV is just full of praise, as I said earlier on. It's been terrific to have you commentating on the games, and hope to maybe get you back doing more at some point.
Yeah, I mean, it's only really, it's just logistics now. Obviously, when the stadium's full, it's not as important, if you like, for me to I mean, and they're in good hands anyway. I mean, the commentator, I always feel bad when Tom has to move across to do the radio, really, but he's been lovely. He's been so welcoming, and I've made a really good friend there. But you're in very good hands if I'm not there, because he is Rangers through and through. But it has been an adventure, as indeed this season has. And as I say, I was there right at the start. Alash cared at home, but I mean, I think I did a couple of other games along the way, but what an adventure this has been. Lundstrom's goal in Dortmund, that Balogun header against Red Star, the double save that the Greeks made in Belgrade. The first 5 minutes against Braga at Ibrox were just sensational. The place was rocking, and then it went all the way to a late win at Kamara. I thought Glenn Kamara's goal against Leipzig was just, that's just him all over. Real touch of class, and then it goes all the way through to Johnny Lundstrom having to score with his Johnny Lundstrom's left foot. I mean, sometimes these things are meant to be, and if that's your semi-final winner, then I can only think that Griggs is going to come forward and head a goal or something. Let's hope that it's not only one, but one as memorably as each step of the way has been memorable so far. It's been a fantastic run.
Well, I'm not going to add anything to that. Thanks for coming on, Clive.
Thank you.